Okay, short video just covering some important terms linked to the internet. And the first term is actually the internet itself. And we're going to answer this question: what's the difference between the internet and the World Wide Web? So, the internet is different to the World Wide Web, and a lot of people use those two terms and think they mean the same thing. So, the internet is actually what we call the devices and the cables that connect us together all around the world. And the internet is actually a collection of separate networks that are connected together. And it's things like the laptops, phones, games consoles, servers, desktop computers, and the actual cables themselves. They all form the internet, the things that you can touch, physical devices. The World Wide Web, on the other hand, is actual information that we're after. It's the resources, it's the web pages, it's the music, it's the movies that we want to stream. So that's the difference between the internet and the World Wide Web. So the resources that form the World Wide Web are actually stored on devices, on computers that are part of the internet. And we try to access those devices to get that information. Okay, so the World Wide Web is information, the internet is the physical devices and the computers. So to access something that's part of the World Wide Web, we will type a URL or a web address, as you may call it. A URL stands for Uniform Resource Locator, and it has different parts. So we've got www. That tells us that it's part of the World Wide Web. Then we normally have the next part is the name. So it could be the BBC or Facebook, something like that. So the name of the organization. And in this one, we've got .co.uk. So it tells us it's a company based in the UK. And UK here, this is what we call a top-level domain. It's where the domain stops. The domain name stops here. After this forward slash tells us we're actually on a device, we're on a computer to get the resource. So we're in a folder called pics, and we're accessing a file called house.jpg. So that's the file that will be sent back to our computer so the browser can display it or we can download it. Okay, there's an example here, so we can see BBC, that's the name of the organization, it's a company in the UK. After the forward slash, we're in a folder called Bitesize, in a folder called Guides, we're in another folder, and we're accessing the test, and you can see the test has loaded in the browser here. So URL, Uniform Resource Locator. Okay, so we use domain names, and we've just talked about some top-level domains, .co, .com. There are lots of others. So you can see some of these tell us different things. You can take a moment to have a look at them if you want to pause the video, but I'll talk through them. So the first four are countries: France, Spain, Germany, Czech Republic. Then we've got different types of organizations. So we've got .gov for government, so that should be a website we can trust. .edu for education, and .org for organizations. So an organization is it's kind of a business that's not selling you anything, like a charity or a school perhaps. So the top level domain can tell us a lot about where we're getting the information from or who we're getting it from. So we need IP addresses. IP address stands for Internet Protocol Address, and it's a unique set of numbers that identifies a computer that's connected to the internet or to any network. And there's a couple of things we need to know about the numbers. First of all, there are four. They're separated by a dot here, and each number can be between 0 and 255. So we got 255, 123, 2317. That's a valid IP address. So you need to know that. So we need to know each number needs to be between 0 and 255, and there are four of them. And that identifies a computer. So a little bit like writing the address of a house to send a letter to somebody. So computers use IP addresses to communicate with each other. So you can see we've got four computers here, each with its own IP address. So if computer 1 wanted to access the CBBC website, it would send a packet of information to the CBBC computer, because the packet of information would have the CBBC's IP address, so we know where to send it. And computer 1 would also send its own IP address as well. And the CBBC computer would read that packet of information and then know that it had to send its web page back to this computer. And that's essentially how computers use IP addresses. They use it to communicate with each other, just like humans use address of a house to send a letter to somebody. But there's a problem with IP addresses. If I ask you to look at those IP addresses, can you remember? I just showed you some IP addresses. You can rewind the video if you want to look at them. But can you remember any of the IP addresses? You might remember some of the web pages. So Google, for example, was one of them. Facebook was another. And that's because humans have a bit of trouble remembering IP addresses. So we need something to help us remember that. And we use the domain name to help us with that. So if I said, what was the IP address of YouTube? You won't remember it because I only showed it you very, very briefly. So we have a problem. Imagine if you had to remember the IP address for every website that you visited. It'd be very difficult. You probably have to write them all down. We don't have trouble remembering the domain names. So domain name is just a human-friendly address for a website, and it'll be words. So we don't like remembering the IP address, so we just give it a domain name. So let's have a look at one. It's google.co.uk. Easy to remember. You can think of some other domain names as well. So Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, BBC, any sort of website that you visit will have a domain name. So if I show you these again, have a look at these, and you can see the domain names now. And if I take them off, can you remember any of them? Probably Google, Facebook, YouTube, because we do well at remembering things that are more visual and have more meaning to us, like words. So those domain names simply are useful for us. The computers will use the IP address. So there's a separate video which explains how they work together. That's called a DNS. Okay, so what's the domain name for YouTube? Well, it's YouTube. Okay, so last couple of bits. So we have got something called protocols. So protocols are just sets of rules that computers use to communicate with each other. And if we're trying to access something via part of the World Wide Web, via the internet, we will have to use a protocol. So computers have to agree which protocol that they're using. It's a set of rules. And the P of HTTP stands for protocol. So both computers use the same protocol. And you can see we've got two here. So we've got HTTP. And if you notice, HTTP is a protocol that doesn't use any encryption. So it's not very safe to use if you're sending personal information. And you can see the BBC website up here has got a little padlock. That tells us it's using something called HTTPS, which is a much more safe and secure version. So again, a protocol is a set of rules that helps communication. HTTP is the rules used by computers or devices on the internet to exchange information. And if everyone follows the same set of rules, everything works. So just like a school might have a school bell protocol, when the bell rings, you move to your next lesson. If everybody does that, then each lesson can start. And you can see the little picture at the top here. We've got somebody saying hi to somebody else. The other person replies hi. Then that's like a protocol. So we've got two people agreeing to communicate with each other. So then you can ask somebody the other time.